Well, hello and welcome back. We're going to move on to bucksaws. These are a newfound friend of mine. My first one that I made was way too heavy, way too beefy, and that kind of put me off them for a while because I thought that a bow saw was quite nimble, very light, and very effective. And I still think the bow saw is a good option. But as far as transportability is concerned, bow saws can be a little bit awkward, especially if you want one with quite a large hoop on it so that you can get through some very thick pieces of wood, like this one here. So this is version number 5, I think. So there's been a learning curve, but yeah, this is the new one. This is actually my largest one. It weighs in very light. There's hardly anything there. We've got a cross beam here of oak, and we've got two sides of ash. I've used polymorph. I know I use it a lot, but it's just so easy with this. You know, you haven't got to worry about getting exact angles, exactly straight bits of wood, and it gets a good hold of it. So, you know, these are very light. Possibly I pushed it as far as I could. I think any thinner than that and there would be issues with its flexibility, because you don't want too much flexibility on those outside poles. A little bit's okay, but not too much. So it all goes together as it should. And there is a little bit of give in these polymorph parts, which is what you want. You don't want it too firm, I don't think. A little bit gives okay. So polymorph, oak, ash, handle, and a little protector for the edge of the blade that comes out. Obviously they're quite sharp and that can dig into the palm of your hand a bit, so that helps with that. Other than that, there isn't much else to it. It's super lightweight, which I love. It's a Barco 24-inch blade. I haven't actually put any notches for these screws to go into yet. But I'm not actually sure I need them. There. So 24-inch, nice long stroke. This is my largest. And a nice piece of bright yellow. Cord, so I can easily spot it and maybe not tread on it, because I'm guessing it could break quite easily if you trod on it. A nice piece of oak, really. Doesn't need to be, as long as it's got a little bit of strength. But you can see the ash is starting to bend in and out, so we'll leave it about there. And that is pretty tight. It's all doing what it should do. I have added a little bit of decoration on there. I don't know if you can see that, or probably. It says clipper on it, because it came from a metal clipper case which contained a clipper lighter. So I used the metal case just to put a bit of thermoplastic in and get the print of that. It's been mentioned that it looks like I would prefer copper to clipper, but anyway, so that is version 5. There's still things I can improve on it. It's portable because the blade sits along this bar and then strapped to this bar, and those two pieces just stack on top, and it fits in roughly a small 10 poles bag, so it's quite portable. The only issue is the length of that blade is 24 inches, which is very large. That fits in my rucksack with ease, but some rucksacks it's going to struggle with, especially if you're day packing. Whereas this one is my favourite. This is a 21 inch. It's all fixed together. The blade is actually screwed into this chiseled out a line down here, and just so I could fit the blade in there, and then made some polymorph clips just to stop it from rattling around more than anything, because it doesn't really need much else. This side isn't on anything, but that doesn't matter. That seems to lock it in plenty good enough. These are all butterfly. Meant to be for quick setup, but as you can see, I'm being cack-handed today. And what I've done with the bolts is I've added a piece of thermoplastic to make them also butterfly, so you never need any tools for it. Try and get this the right way around. The way it clicks in, I really like. It just feels good. Again, that's thermoplastic. Nothing particularly neat on that really. I need to maybe touch that up a little bit. What I will do with this one is probably just linseed oil the 2 ash pieces. You shouldn't linseed oil oak if it's going to be outdoors or in damp conditions, because it's very slow drying and this is very porous, so it gets in there and it takes a long while to dry. Meanwhile, that's open to a lot of potential to rot basically, so you shouldn't use it. It doesn't need it. It's super smooth. It's a beautiful piece of wood, very strong, even with the channel that's been cut into it. And these are plenty big enough for the side arms. They don't bend much at all. They're strong enough not to bend, which again, you don't want too much bend on those edges. So the setup of this one is actually very quick. If I had my A game, which quite frankly, I think I left that at home. But let's see if I can sort these little butterfly things out. Again, I'm just cack-handed today. And with this one, I have the bolts going through the actual framework. And I prefer this because it's a lot more stable. It can't come out or pop out. I'll show you that as well. It's just a simple little thing. That's the nut. I just added a couple of plastic wings on it, and that's plenty good enough. I've been using this setup now for a few weeks, maybe even a couple of months. Lose track. And then just line up the second one. I've got a butterfly nut on this one, so yeah, there we go. You can't beat a butterfly nut really, but these plastic options are okay. So the clips I don't want to lose. Hopefully they will just stay on the crossbar. So here we have the same thing. I don't know whether I dare push another. Right, that is super tight. I haven't made an additional handle for this because this is actually very smooth and a good shape to fit my hand anyway. Whilst I just love this one. The only issue is on some strokes you will hit into here, so I might even make a little protection thermoplastic little shield and a handle just to stop that damaging when you do get too into it. But for short sharp things it's perfect. Things like this, it would rip through. It's a nice solid piece of birch, and a good size silver birch. It's got some very fine rings right early on, and as it gets out it gets quite thick. So the heart of this is actually very strong, quite hard silver birch, and very heavy. I think there's a lot of water in there, so you might get problems with splitting possibly, because that water has got to evaporate and causes problems on doing so. And I've got a bit of hazel, which I think is a gorgeous ring structure. Very tightly packed, very even, very equal, very central. A perfect pole. And again, it's not as heavy as the birch, but there is weight there. Then we've got ash, which it's got quite a distinctive circles, age lines. They're quite coloured, quite brown. I'll show you another piece of ash. It's quite obvious, isn't it, to see those rings. There's a lot of colour going on to define where those rings are, and it's a great bit of wood because of those rings. I mean, that is very strong. Prone to splitting though, I have found. This is a lovely piece of goat willow or pussy willow in its early form, in its early days. It's quite prolific around here, the pussy willow. We've got the little catkins absolutely everywhere at the moment. I have actually carved a couple of fittings. I was going to make a little, I don't even remember what I was going to make now, but it splits into planks beautifully, you know, and these last a long time. This thing that I made, you may have seen it before, but I made that must be 6 months ago, and it's just been left outside. It's not been looked after. I mean, not always left outside, sometimes under cover, but it's just durable. I mean, I'd put no effort into making that, as you can see, but the planks were so easy to collect. Got split on that one immediately, but you can get uniformity, well, basically a roughly the same size planks very easily, even with what I had, which would have been just the chisel at the time and some wedges, and it runs straight along the grain. Great planks. It just says plank, doesn't it, really? It's beautiful. Great piece of wood. Then we've got the oaks, which this is a big old bit. The biggest I've took on so far. Here, I actually made a bow saw especially for this, so that it had enough depth to cut all the way through. So my top of my bow saw would have been up here maybe, so I could still work it, because this was laying on the ground. It is incredibly solid. I've given it no treatment at all. It's just been left outside continuously for 6 or 7 months. I've used it for chopping wood on, and it's hard, well, there's damaged scratches on there, but there's nothing that's going into it at all. There is a fungus growing on it. Can't do a lot about that. I could probably bleach it and well, not linseed oil it, because that will rot it, but that tongue oil maybe would help seal out and keep that water out a little bit. I have been using it as a little saw bench and for chopping, but soon I will split this, because it is a beautiful, strong, tough piece of wood, and it's just about the right length for handles and other things I've got in mind. Although that will be a shame to lose it, but there is plenty more of this. If you go back far enough on my episodes, I featured the oak and where this came from, and gathering planks from oak. Still in use, most of them, actually. I think you'll find that these pieces, these crossbars that I use, were originally from that fallen oak planks that I collected, with hardly any tools, from very big, large, fallen oak. So check that out, you might find that interesting. I'll hold it up. It was, at the time, I'm glad I didn't make it any bigger than I cut this, because it's quite a long way away, and this really is quite a solid, heavy lump. But the rings, there's probably 100. I don't know. You'd think there'd be an app where it could count the rings for you. Maybe there is. Maybe it's a Dragon's Den moment. Maybe no one else really gives a shit. But I do. Not enough to maybe count them, but $15 to there. So if we say approximately, I mean, this is very 30, 45, 60, possibly more because they're a lot tighter in that heart. 60 years plus lump of wood that has been seasoning now for about 2 years, I would guess. I will eventually make something very nice out of it, but it has just been used for chopping bits of wood on. It's took no damage hardly at all from all of my axe chucking at it with all my might with my crap axe. But yeah, this is never gonna, that's about it. Great bit of wood over here as well. There's all the birch. I've got a nice long, heavy, which means it's quite fresh, piece of oak. It's as straight as I'm going to get a piece of oak without actually it coming from a very large piece, but there is a lot of knots all the way down, so oak is awkward to work with. It's one of the toughest, I think, except for maybe hawthorn, which is just absolutely riddled with knots, but you can get some good bits. But yeah, I'm hoping to get some very nice pieces out of this bit. I don't want to burn this because this has been seasoned quite well. You know, really the bark was quite thick and it's not taken any damage on that bark yet, so the heart of this should be fine. So hopefully we'll get some nice long straight-ish bits of wood out of that for various projects, different things. And perhaps strangely, this was version number 4, by the way. This is actually heavier than my 24-inch one because I'm sort of evolving these things sometimes not very well, and I do think I think this is the best combination. So there is a little bit more weight, but you do need a certain amount of sturdiness with these things, and my 24-inch one is pushing that a little bit. But we shall see. I can replace any of the parts of it, no problem. That's the beauty of these bucksaws. They really are very simple. The only awkward bit in making a bucksaw really is connecting that bit to that bit, and there's multiple ways you can do that. If you're good at woodwork and you've got the tools, very easily done. I'm more of a bodger. I find ways to make things work that ordinarily most people wouldn't use because they would, you know, have some skill in woodwork or something, I don't know. But yeah, they're as strong as any bit of wood or any joint that I could make. So, but yeah, so heavy but solid. Not too flexible. The blade's locked in. It can't go nowhere. It's just generally a better all-rounder, and the fact that it packs away into a very small little neat pack with no sharp edges to rip anything in your backpack with. Very portable.